Looking like I should have the screen the other way around. Nah, I get if I know. So I've got to put the camera that way. Huh. Well, that's a bugger. I wasn't planning on that. Ugh. Rotate device. How's that work? That look any better? I don't think the holder's going to hold it that way. Well, I didn't plan that out very well, did I? Anyway, I just felt like I wanted to go live because first time ever I've reached 1,000 subs. So thanks very much. Yeah, I'm really. Why did I have to do that sort of thing with the camera, eh? Seems you can only go live with the upright camera after all this time, man. Oh well, what if I just leave it like that? That'll do. Anyway, it's a celebration, and so on this auspicious occasion, I went and bought a vintage ale, which is quite. I also put on I dressed up for the day, as you can see. I got my lab coat on because it's all scientific and stuff. So, first of all, bloody big cheers. Thank you very much to everybody who helped me get to 1,000. It's something, I try not to get excited about stuff like that, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. So, Nachikita and Gary Wybanger, thank you very much for being here with me. And if you have a glass, feel free to raise it with me. I was just talking about this vintage ale just the other day with somebody. I said, haven't seen it in a long time. It's a special edition Cooper's beer, and it's more than your average standard beer. It's 7.5% alcohol. So I thought I'd bring my glasses, but turns out I didn't bring my Liz the Iron Maiden, hello, thank you very much. Great to see you here as well. Wow, it's turned into a party already. 3 of us in the chat, awesome. So, first of all, it was a huge surprise to me to wake up this morning and see 1K subs. It's been something I've sort of been really, I don't know, just it's a landmark or a milestone in your life, and it's for me. I'm pretty stoked. Not only that, when I got to work today and realised the date, so I'm a bit of a numbers person, and it's like, wow, it's all happening. Today was a good day. It's the 8th of the 8th, which is actually also all horses' birthday. How about that, eh? And yeah, it's. If anyone knows anything about numerology, 8 is like the luckiest number. So it couldn't have happened on a better day. I've come home feeling just good, really good. So thanks so much. So yeah, I didn't really have a plan on making the video. I just wanted to have a quick thank you to everybody, and now I've realised I left my glasses back over there, so I might go and grab them, and so I can read the chat as well, because I've got good close vision. Yeah, if I hold my phone, I can read it, not a problem, but I need glasses to see in the distance. 1 second. Alrighty, thank you. I've even got a present to unwrap. How good is that? I probably should have rubbed all this off before it started too, because although I'm not going to use it, hey, it's a big occasion. Let's put YouTube up with 1K, eh? All right. So, again, haha, it's not my birthday actually. It's the all four-legged horse's birthday, 8th of the 8th. Or is it the 1st of August? I could be wrong. Could be the 1st of August. But either way, it's the 8th month, and 8. And 888 is actually the most auspicious lucky number in Chinese numerology. Mine's in June. It's actually the winter solstice here in Australia. It's my actual birthday. Thank you. But hey, let's have one every day. Every day should be Christmas. Cheers. So it's a really big occasion for me in a sense, because it's taken me a bloody lot of hard work, not as far as YouTube's concerned, but just hard work in general to get back on my feet from where I was. You know, I started off pretty young actually, like at naught, but when I first moved up to this area, I started off with pretty much next to nothing. I started a pub cleaning job. My partner at the time, she was an assistant nurse in nursing homes, and we were just going along, getting along to save a bit of money on rent, because we were paying $150 a week rent. We bought a caravan, moved into a caravan down in Byron, just down along the main beach, or not the main beach, the second main beach, the one between Cape Byron and Broken Head Headland. That's where I lived for a couple of years, and continued on my education about learning about the moon cycles and the tide cycles, and it was a great lifestyle. I came down to become a naturopath actually, so that's why I'm wearing my professor's coat, because technically I could have been a doctor by now, so chose not to. I ended up missing out on the date to enroll for the naturopathy course that I intended to enroll in. I thought, that's okay, I'll take a gap year, I'll just kick back and enjoy the beach. And my pub cleaning job started early in the morning, so I was finished by about sunrise, which was awesome. So it was as good as being on the dole, except I'm earning my own money, so it was great. So Flat Earth birthday, awesome, Liz. I wouldn't know when mine was. I started way back then, like 30 years ago. I was reading all sorts of weird books, and the one I particularly picked up on was the one called Secret of the Ages, which was a book about Hollow Earth. That's what started me down the path, which eventually got me to Flat Earth. And it was a very interesting one in that it talked about the Tamarack mine mysteries, where if you suspend plumb bobs down deep mine shafts, they get further apart, further down. So two mine shafts a mile apart at the surface, go down a mile and join them with a level mine shaft at the bottom, and take scientific measurements. This was done very scientifically. Geodetic scientists looking for a better formula to measure the circumference of the Earth, and they found it to be 1 mile and 8 inches apart at the bottom, which is the exact opposite of what we think curvature of the Earth is. So that started me off as a bit of a concave Earth way back then. So yeah, I've always been playing with stuff in my head and doing what I had to do to earn a living. Got married, picked my marriage date according to a full moon on a Saturday, which ended up being the 9th of the 9th, back in 95. The wife got pregnant. We were living in a caravan, didn't want to bring up a child in the caravan. We ended up being able to buy a house in Bangalow, which is just up the road from Byron. It's now another one of those trendy places you couldn't afford to buy. You won't even find a timber shack there for under $1 million. That's the way how crazy everything's gone. But after being there for a while, by the time our eldest daughter, and we had a son 17 months later, 17, 178, I love the number 468. I'll bring that up again because I'm talking about numbers, and I love talking about numbers. The 468 connection is affecting me in my life. 17 months later, my son was born. He's born on the 22nd as well as I am, but he's born on the 2211, which is 33, and that was 97. So that's a 16, so that's a 7. So he's escaped the full wrath of the 33. But it's the same anniversary of JFK's assassination, mind you. And what we didn't know at the time is we were going to call him Joseph. When he was going to be born, about 2 weeks before he was born, she had a premonition dream that he fell downstairs, cracked his head, and died. And that was a boy called Joe. So we couldn't call him Joe after that dream. And the name Jack just seemed perfectly right. And I had no idea at the time. I found out years later that was the anniversary of JFK, who was also called Jack. It was his anniversary of his death. And the only difference you could tell between him and his older sister, my firstborn, the pictures of them as babies, they were splitting images of each other, absolutely identical, except for Jack had a big birthmark on his head. Exactly where JFK was shot. How about that, eh? Weird coincidence or what? So I've been a very lucky man throughout my life. I've been super duper lucky. When he was 7 months old, Jessica, the eldest, the day she turned 2, we managed to buy a business. And it was a woman that I worked with cleaning the pubs early in the morning who had bought a pet store. And the funny thing was, everywhere we went with my ex-partner, we were still good back then, really good. Everywhere we went, she dragged me into every pet shop. When I first met her, she had pets. She had a little aviary with budgies and quail in it, and she'd breed budgies and swap the babies over to buy seed for them, and that. So it was sort of a non-profit hobby, which she got a lot of enjoyment out of it. I was never a fan of captive birds, mind you, but the thing is, we had a similar interest in animals, and all the time she kept dragging me through to every pet store, as I started to think, I just knew. I knew a lot of things instinctively, things I shouldn't know. Like when I first saw her at high school, some years earlier, I actually saw her. I won't go into that. Anyway, I just knew that her and I would get married, would have 3 children, would get divorced by the time she's around 30 or in her 30s. Don't ask me how I knew that either. But anyway, I knew we'd have a pet store. So anyway, this woman I worked with, she bought a pet store, a small one that somebody started up in Byron, tiny little 33 square metre shop. He built it up for about 12 months, sold it to her for a reasonable price, around $30,000. She bought it, was running it successfully for a year or so, but then she got pregnant herself, and then she was never open. She got pregnancy, diabetes. The business was failing because she was never there, and eventually she was trying to sell it. She wanted $48,000 for it back then, 48, and it's like, no way in hell could we even think about it. And then when she told me she was closing, I went back to her the next day and I said, looked around the shop and said, I'll give you 10 grand for it so you don't have to close. And she just told me to off basically, and so fair enough. I just thought I'd throw it out there. And every sale that she had going through the real estate agent fell through, never got a sale. 3 days later, she rings me up. She said, that offer you made me, which was sort of half in jest. Yeah, she goes, I'll take it. I was like, oh, really? So, geez, we were pretty poor. We didn't have much, but we were able to max out a credit card and get our credit limit extended up to $5,000. Managed to borrow $5,000 off my parents. We bought a business for $10,000. Hey, it's not very often you can do that, but this was going back in the 90s, late 90s. And we had to pay a lot of money in rent, and we were just breaking even. every week. I'd go to clean the pubs in the morning, go to the shop, and then she'd have to take off and go into a nursing home job through the day, whatever. And we had 2 kids to manage. We couldn't have cats or dogs in the shop. It was too small. Long story short, we ended up building up a really good business. I told her she had to quit a nursing home job because it conflicted with the hours of the store opening, but I was able to keep cleaning pubs at 4 a.m, race home, shower, coffee, race in, help open up shop, do a day's work. She'd race home, pick up the kids from daycare, and it was a real struggle for many years. But after 4 years, we'd built up such a good business. I was able to give up cleaning pubs in the morning at 4 a.m. and do all that sort of stuff. We'd moved our business twice. By that stage, we were out in an industrial estate in Byron, and our business started doing quite well. We were smart about it. We were good at it, and I was really good at what I did. We were like the free vet. I'd built the store up for over 100 aquariums. We had 14 aquariums at home. We had 8 dogs, 8 cats, a pile of guinea pigs and rabbits and birds, aviaries full of birds, and we bred a lot of things ourselves, which cut out the middleman and cut out the tax man, and it was a great business. A lot of things were done cash back then, so good to see some more in the chat there too. Thanks for coming. I'm trying to ignore the chat for a minute. I'm just trying to tell a bit of my life story, try and get a few things out there of what I went through. And the thing is, our third child, second daughter, she was practically born in the pet store before we moved into the industrial estate. So we had 3 kids within 3 years. It was a bit nuts, and this girl was nearly born in the pet store. We closed early that day. We closed at 3. Went to the local Byron hospital, just 200-300 metres away as the crow flies, 500 metres to drive. By 5:05 that afternoon, out she popped. But of course, she had to have a retained placenta too, didn't she? So still back off to Lismore, where the other 2 were born, Lismore Base Hospital, to retrieve the placenta and all that. So I did it bloody tough. I did it really hard. We didn't have a day off in all that time. I worked my guts out. But I knew I was getting somewhere because we'd bought our house in Bengalo, and the goal was then eventually to build up the business and eventually be able to buy a bit of a property where we could eventually become self-sufficient. That was always my goal. Organic gardening, composting everything recycled. That was my thing. That was what I was into. Unfortunately, by that stage, the ex was getting a bit greedy because we're starting to make some good dollars, and we had to hire people to help us in the store. And she didn't like the fact that it took them longer to clean out the animals if we put straw in with them. No shit. This is the straw that broke horse's back. Is that she just didn't want it. And I was like, I take this stuff home to compost. There are rabbit and guinea pig poo and the bird poo and all that sort of stuff, and it's wrapped in newspaper. But when I put it back into the compost heap, it just didn't break down. It was just dry paper. But when we had straw mixed in with it, it broke down, the worms got into it, it made good, healthy soil. It was exactly what I wanted, and I kept stressing. We made so much money from straw. She just didn't get it into her head how much money we made from straw. I'd buy a big bale, a full bale of barley stubble, $4 a bale if I bought them in bulk. I'd just get 30 at a time, get them delivered at home. It was not a huge outlay. Out of every bale, half of it, I'd split it up and put it into big plastic bags the size of garbage bags and give really good value to my customers. And I'd sell each of those 8 bags for $4 each. So that's instant profit. And then the other half of each bale, I could use it for free in the store and make really good compost. And she couldn't get into her head that these animals that needed bloody straw, needed it in their diet, made them look and smell good, made the store look good and smell good. And the thing with the cleaning is our cleaners only had to do it half as often. So even though it took them twice as long, at the end of the day, it's exactly the same amount. So you could see how frustrated I was getting over that time between her greed and me just wanting to do what's right for the animals, for the community, for me being the town's free vet. I, you know, fish guru, animal guru, dogs, cats, birds. We started even selling things like seahorses and scorpions and things like that. Things that low impact on the environment and giving them actually a better environment because of the way we were the ones caretaking them. You know, we became their slaves. It's not like we're taking things and enslaving them like a farmer might, or, you know, I was making profit, usually not that much off the animal itself. But where I got profit was by giving people a good deal on the animal. They'd come back to me then for the feed and the housing, the water bottles, and you know, you name it, the accessories. That's where the money was. I had a thriving business. And she came in that one morning after I'd been up all night, putting straw out, making my store look and work the way it should have. And she saw what I'd done and she screamed at me to get out and broke my heart. So that's where years of my hard work went because of somebody's human greed. So divorce, it got ugly. She took the kids. The son ended up coming back and living with me. She took the daughters away. They could come and visit every second weekend. And then as they got older, got weekend jobs, they stopped visiting so much and so on and so forth. But the good side of that is, even though I had to go back to work again for somebody else, I ended up buying the cleaning contract from the place I used to clean pubs. And for 5 years, I had a thriving business there as well. So it wasn't all bad. I did okay for a while. Anyway, I went through some bloody tough times. I'm trying to keep my kids. My son ended up coming back to live with me eventually, which was great, but I had other relationship problems with another woman because I was so desperate to keep my kids, and knowing that while I'm cleaning pubs at night, starting at midnight now, not at 4, midnight till 7 or 8 every day, I desperately needed somebody who could be at home so I could have my kids there, because I couldn't just leave them alone at that age. Yeah, my youngest was still only 7 at that stage. And so relationship problems, all sorts of problems. Eventually, I lost the business, lost the house, lost everything, and I'd been struggling to find work ever since. And it's been a real bloody struggle. And so I sort of thought, g'day, Aussie Gold. Thanks for coming, mate. Hey. And also a quick shout out to, who else didn't I say g'day to? RH and Ghost of Nicolo. Thanks, guys, for dropping by. I know I'm ranting and raving. I just wanted to get some of my story out so that by the time I went back, struggling to pay rent, trying to put my son through high school, trying to find whatever job I could. I got bloody cleaning jobs, ended up getting a job in a pet store in Lismore. It was shitty. They'd give me 3 or 4 hour shifts. I'd have to drive all the way in. I was struggling to pay rent, and at times I was getting pretty bloody desperate, and I was begging people for assistance, which was really fucking low, really bad. I feel terrible about those days when I had to do it, but I really didn't have a lot of choice. Things only started to pick up for me when I finally picked up a meter reading job, driving around reading people's electricity meters. Things started to get good until I tried to help out a friend, and shouldn't have done it on a Thursday night because it turned out I ended up having a few too many drinks over at her place, came home, wasn't really fit for work the next day, woke up in a panic, thought, oh shit, I got to get to work by 8 o'clock so I can be on the clock and get paid, and got picked up by the fuzz, way the fuck over the limit, hung over as a dog, lost my job, lost my license, lost a lot, just like that. So, yeah, I've done a few stupid things in my life. I've lost a lot of things. I've had some great fortune, and I've had a lot of bad times, and I've been working my way back up to where I am now. And I think that I'm just being fed income I'm not in the flat earth to make money. That's what I think is, initially, don't get me wrong, when I was desperate, I thought it would be a good idea. It might be a good way. Hey, why not make up a funky name, Flat Earth Aussie Jesus? That's got some pizzazz to it. And I can try and get a name for myself, but it was a silly idea. It was never going to work. And the name actually was taken up as a joke from things people were saying. It was either that or Gandalf. Speaking of which, you can call me Professor Gandalf. Got my Gandalf hat today and my professor coat. So, not that I want to wear it, mind you. So basically, I've worked my guts out to get back to where I am by, fortunately, getting into doing traffic control. Traffic control is not exactly the dream job. It's not something that somebody of my intellect and urge to help people exactly is ideal for, but it pays the bills. So I've got a job, pays the bills, and it's got me back on my feet. I was lucky that a friend who was a friend at the time offered me a block of land to move on to by the time I got evicted from my house in Clunes, which I lived in for 10 years. So I'm going further west from Bangalow. Clunes is just further towards Lismore, which I had to go to for work at the time anyway. And the rent was getting pushed up. It just got pushed up to $480 a week. Fortunately, I had a housemate back then who shared. He paid about $200, which helped a lot. And by the time it just reached the point where it went from $450 to $480 a week, they did another house inspection a week later after I'd already had the lawns mowed, mind you, but just before Christmas. The lawns here grow so fast that in 1 week they can look like they're unmowed. And the real estate agent said, "Oh, look, we can kick him out now. His lawns aren't mowed." I was like, well, if you came here a week earlier when you were supposed to, but they couldn't because of the rain, I could have probably stayed there. But it was time to move, moved on. COVID hit, and in Australia, the whole COVID thing said you can take out your superannuation if you're experiencing hardship. And I was experiencing hardship because work did drop off a little bit that particular time. So you could take your own money, 10 grand of your own money. So I took that. That's how I bought my caravan and shipping container and moved on to the block. And then for about a year and a half, 18 months, I was living very cheap rent in my own shit, but had no running water, had power. It was bloody tough. Then the opportunity come up to come into this place, and now I'm back paying shitloads of money in rent again, over $400 a week, $430 to be precise, which is a lot. But I'm on my own, I'm living cheap, living frugally, and I'm getting somewhere. And that's what I want to say is I'm getting somewhere. All my life I've been getting somewhere. I've been investing in things that I know are going to help me into the future. And unfortunately, my coping device is this beautiful thing called beer. This is the vintage ale, and it gets me through. I used to smoke a bit of green back in the day when my businesses were thriving. So the kids came home from school one day and they said, "Oh, there was someone from the government at school today." I said, "Yeah." They said, "Oh, yeah, they were interviewing all the kids about do their parents smoke." I said, "Oh, yeah, that not a big deal. I didn't smoke. I've never been a smoker in my life." And but the ex, she used to smoke a few cigarettes. She wasn't a heavy smoker, but she got heavier and heavier as time went on. But she'd smoke 3, 4, 5 cigarettes a day, whatever. And so I said, "Yeah, what did you say to the people from the government then?" I said, "Oh, yeah, Mummy smokes cigarettes and Daddy smokes through a bottle." Oh, fuck. Oh, well, I haven't actually hidden it from them. I don't do it in front of them, but sometimes if there's a friend around, we're sitting out in the backyard, we might have a few bongs or whatever. And I didn't try to hide it from the kids. It wasn't that big a deal. I always said to my kids, I'd rather he actually had a few joints or bongs or whatever than get drunk. That was always my attitude, so... They were quite shocked at that, mind you. But anyway, my kids were still young and innocent. And I thought, oh, geez, I'm running a business here. I'm raising a family. I don't want to go to jail or have anything against my name. So I stopped smoking. And that was my downfall, really, because I had to replace it with something legal. And the only legal thing was beer. So I started brewing, drinking too much Coopers, and that's been part of my silly mistakes in my life. But I've never given up hope, and I feel like I'm getting somewhere. So, and thanks to people, like there's 5 watching right now according to my thingamy here, and 5 out of 1,000. That's terrific, awesome. There may have been some come and go, so that's awesome. I haven't really been looking at the chat too much yet. I will get into it eventually. So I just wanted to say I've been through some bloody tough times, and I hope to think I've been making some wise investments. Like, I didn't turn it on because it wouldn't let my camera actually go in the camera holder with the tripod to have a better light. Now they've got more reflections on my glasses. So yeah, lighting. I'm trying to build up a bit of a channel, put it that way. I'm not hoping to make money out of it. That's the one thing I want to stress is if I do make money out of it, it will be because I want to find decent products which I can try and sell or resell or manufacture. So I'm giving people value for money. I'm going to do my utmost to ensure that you don't find ads on my channel, because there's one thing that drives me up the wall, and one of the reasons why I went off television so many years ago was the bloody ads driving me nuts. Now, because I was a bit of a chuffer, smoking cones and all that back then, it gave me a second sight into the psychology behind everything, the television programs and the advertisements especially, how they would just attack you on your lowest common denominator, make fools out of people, and it was just insulting to me. I couldn't watch it, so I ended up flicking the television off. And when we first moved to Bangalow, even before my first daughter was born, by the time we got there, we had no television reception, the aerial didn't work, and I never got it fixed for 10 years. So I was 10 years back from 96 to at least 2006 of zero television. Right away from the commercials, be at work, people would say, "Oh, did you see this on the news? Did you hear about that? No, don't watch it. Don't care about it. Don't want to know about it. Talk about it amongst yourselves. It's ain't my business. I don't care. I care more about going out for a surf or, going for a walk along the beach, doing outdoor natural things, climbing a headland, looking out at Cape Byron. When you're at the Cape Byron and you're looking out to the horizon, at first glance you think there's a horizon. You spend some time looking, really looking, and focus. You start to realize you are seeing so much further than you think you should be able to. And I was doing all this stuff before I even contemplated that the earth could be flat. I just thought it's really, really big. I had no idea of the dimensions of what a spinning space ball globular earth should be. I just assumed, well, it must be over 100, 150, 200 miles before you'll even start to see the curvature. It was the biggest shock in the world when I started really researching and saying, hang on, 8 inches per mile squared, that's actually, we're seeing too far. And that Eric Dubé one, don't get me wrong, I'm not a huge fan of Eric, but I'm not a huge against him at all either. I think each to their own. He's doing his thing, and he introduced me to it with the 200 proofs. And that's what got the ball rolling. And from then on, I thought a lot of the things he said actually were utter nonsense, and I still say that to this day, and I've even tried to contact him. I've left him messages, I've told him, and I said, I think it's ridiculous the things that you're saying about the moon. I mean, fair enough, you don't know and you're having an educated guess, and that's better than none at all. But anybody today, yeah, and I mean no insult to anybody watching me or who is going to be watching this soon or whatever, no insult whatsoever. But if you think that it's not sunlight causing the moonlight, then you've been bamboozled. It's as dumb as thinking that we live on a spinning space ball. All the light in this realm, apart from starlight, comes from the sun. All of it. The moonlight comes indirectly from the sun. So of course it's not going to be anything like sunlight whatsoever. It's like thinking if you're in a low place and it's sunset and you see a distant mountain and it's still lit by the sun, do you think you would feel heat from that? To think you would feel heat from the moon? It's the same thing. There's absolutely no way you would. It's a completely different light altogether. It's just a thing lit by the sun. And so when it's completely dark, it seems to be glowing like a lamp because it's so dark. It's called exposure. So the moon doesn't create its own light in the way that most people think. Now, I still do think it actually creates a plasma projection into our atmosphere in a different sense. So in that way, it creates its own light. So I've made videos on that. So look on my moon videos. I'm not here to argue or debate or anything. I'm here to celebrate. So cheers. So now I'll have a quick look at the chat again. Yes, detest ads. Absolutely. 20 years watching no TV. Wow, that's awesome, Aussie Gold. And now they pop up on YouTube. Exactly. People that you want to watch because they've monetized their channel. Sometimes you have to watch through at least 30 seconds of ads. You can't even skip them anymore. And that drives me up the freaking wall. Bloody oath, we're passionate about flat Earth. I am absolutely passionate about it. I think it is the game changer that we've been waiting for throughout all of history. So it's huge to me. And I want to use it as a conduit to a better world, not just for me, like I'm taking care of my needs now. So I don't need YouTube or any sort of other side grift, as they call it, to get by. I'm getting by, and I intend to keep getting by. And I think people that are depending upon spreading the message on YouTube to try and make a living, I think you're going down the wrong avenue, and it's doomed for fail because nobody wants to see a grifter. It's not a thing you can make money off. If eventually you get a following of people because you're doing something as a result of flat Earth, which is what I eventually hope to do, well, yeah, if it gives me a few little side bucks here and there. But the goals that I've got in mind are way bigger than what a few bucks off YouTube could ever do anyway. I'm not going to sit on my laurels and say, oh, well, I'm making another $500 a month or something off YouTube. I can just kick back and do this the rest of my life and not fight the flat Earth or anyone like them. These people making money off flat Earth because they're fighting it. Those are the worst grifters of all. Some of the worst people, him, Mattoon, that's that other, is it Deegan or something? The bloke with his little dog sitting there. Bloody Simon Dan, people making money off flat Earth because they're fighting it and because they want to be popular. Of course, people fight change and they want to see somebody fight the idiot glass on the YouTube because they assume that we're low-hanging fruit. These are the people who were bullied throughout their life, who are low-hanging fruit. They're average. They may be slightly above average in intelligence, and because they were picked on by people who are in superior intelligence, they think flat earthers are going to be an easy target. It's popular. I'm going to pick on that because I know nothing about it. Oh, they think we're on a disc spinning through space. And gravity would just suck it back into a ball. This is going to be so easy. I'm just going to defeat them and look so smart. And everybody's going to love me because I'm so clever. And then I can talk with my hands like Simon Dan. And people like that, they're the true grifters, man. The truth is, No way in the world would we step up and call ourselves a flat earther if for a second we doubted it. We have checked it out. We have analysed it. We go, holy shit. I never wanted to be a flat earther. Like, they're the lowest, dumbest people in the world, aren't they? The most superstitious ones are going to sail off the edge. Nobody wants to be a flat earther. That's how we all start. And then when we become one, and we realise there's plenty of other people with intelligence who realise, hey, there's a lot to this. We do have a little bit of a sense of belonging, but it doesn't mean that, well, for me, I don't, I haven't tried to join a clique or be part of an in crowd so much. I'll follow a few, but if I see something I think is wrong, I'll speak up, and all of a sudden, he's an idiot. Don't worry, don't listen to Flat Earth Roscoe or Iron Horse because he had a go at somebody for saying something wrong, usually moon related, not even Earth related. But if I see something wrong, I'll say it. I think you're wrong. If you think the moon produces a cold light, I'll tell you why it doesn't produce a cold light. It has a cooling effect. And that's what any light will do. I've tested it. Went out for years with my laser thermometer, walking my dog, watching the stars, seeing the Southern Cross in the same place of the sky every night so I can talk with authority about that as well, and doing moonlight temperature tests. And some nights there's no moonlight. There's 3 street lights on the way down this road. I just did some tests in the street light, and lo and behold, the temperature directly under the light compared to the exact same road over where it's completely dark is a couple of degrees cooler. And so from that, I was able to analyse that any sort of light creating a very subtle heat effect, because heat rises, is going to cause the heat to rise even faster, and then that causes a gentle, cool air to come and fill its place. So something in any sort of light at night time, when things are naturally cooling, will have a cooling effect. And moonlight is particularly effective because it covers such a broad area, and the difference between something in moonlight to moonshade is quite distinct. And so if you put a glass of water in the moonshade and one in the moonlight and waited half an hour and go and measure the temperature of each of them, the one in the moonlight will measure a couple of degrees cooler. Doesn't mean the light is a cooling light. That's where Eric Dubay messed with everybody's head, because he got us when we were vulnerable and young into the flat earth belief, and he fooled us. If dead flesh, you leave it out in sunlight, it is sanitizing because of the heat, and the UV light sanitizes it, dehydrates it, takes away the breeding environment for bacteria to live, and the UV light kills the bacteria as well. Whereas whether there's moonlight or not, if you left flesh out overnight unrefrigerated any time of the month, it will putrefy, because the bacteria in a moist environment just gets into it, and then overnight it's gone a bit yuck. You put it in the moonlight and leave it in the moon shade, it's not going to make any difference to flesh putrefying. So it's just a few folk tales that he spread, which sort of makes us look a bit dumb when I see people repeating them ad infinitum on the channels and stuff, which, I'm on Facebook quite a lot, because that's where you can go and argue and educate the fools. And even if the ones you're arguing with will never change their minds, I think there's a lot of people on the sideline who are seeing the truth, and you're planting seeds, if nothing else. So that's why I love it. And also, I'm testing my own theories. You're constantly testing your beliefs against the hive mind of the internet, especially on Facebook, because there's so many on it, and it usually is the lowest common denominator. So you get onto some of the flat earth channels there, and you get always people that gang up against the flat earth and that's what I love, because bam, thank you, ma'am. I love a good fucking argument against people who don't know shit from clay. And with all the time I've spent cleaning shit in my life, I know the difference. I think fame got to Eric a bit. He could use his fame to bring flat earthers together rather than calling genuine people shills. So I ended up burning some bridges, unfortunately. I believe you're correct. Dead straight there. I couldn't believe it when it first happened. I would have thought he'd be happy to see other people like Mark Sargent and the Globebusters. I think they were some of the early bigger names that came up. And Eric, I think he's got that Messiah complex, like easy enough to do. You've found something new, you're going to introduce it to the world. You live in an exotic land like Thailand, and you meditate and you do yoga, and so you're feeling pretty spiritual, and you found something and you're introducing it to the world. You don't want competition to that. You don't want to see some American grifters come in and steal your limelight. But, once the cat is out of the bag, it's the 100th monkey effect, as I call it. And in fact, just as I'm driving home today from work, something hit me about the 100th monkey effect. And now I'm trying to think really hard what it is. But these days, it's come to me now. These days, it's not just 100 monkeys. When it happens now, it's 100,000 upright bald monkeys. Well, we're not all bald. 100,000 at a time. Once an idea hits the internet, that's why it suddenly takes off. And that's why Flat Earth took off. And that is why now True Earth is what I think is the better term for it, because it ain't flat. We know it ain't flat. It's got topography. So flat is actually an incorrect term for it. It's undulating topographical land above sea level. So it should be called flat ocean, if anything. But flat Earth is what it got stuck with, and we live on the Earth, so it makes sense. But when someone came up with the idea of True Earth, at the very same time, I was coming up with the concept of True Earth myself. And next thing I know, everybody's coming up with it as well. So, I just pick up on the 100th monkey effect, pardon me, of certain sayings as they come out. And this beer is actually a very good example, because it was only just last week, and I'm talking to somebody about how we love the Coopers, and I said, sometimes, there's the beard beer. He's almost got as good a one as me, doesn't he? Like, far out. Or maybe I'm nearly as good as him. The beard beer, and the vintage ale, it's a strong one. It's 7.5%. So there's over 2.1 standard drinks per 375 ml bottle, and it doesn't even feel like 375 mils anymore. I had to check that as well. I bet they brought it down to 330, 355. Yeah, 355 mils. See, they're making our bottles smaller and smaller. Used to be a standard bottle of spirits for people that drank it was 750 mils. Now they're all 700 mils. Now the 375 is 355. This is how they're getting us. Jesus is Luke Skywalker. How you doing, bro? Yes, monkeys separate on different islands, somehow figure things out around the same time, but it's usually around the same time. It's the same thing with a really good invention as well. There's, say somebody back in the day invents the plough, and somebody in another continent at the same time invents the plough. And that's how the human mind works, is that when an idea's time has come, it is eventual. Stephen King has a good book, Everything's Eventual. If something is going to be, it will be, and when the idea's time has come, it will come, and that's what's happened with Flat Earth. Flat Earth came when its time was due. They'd been arguing it for centuries. In fact, most people, it's a story I tell quite a bit, not that, well, quite a bit lately, is one day I was at a bowling club. I used to play a bit of lawn bowls, and that's where you meet some really, really lovely old people. And this one at Mullumbimby that I used to frequent quite often, there was one particular old guy. He was a stutterer, and so he was a little bit hard to talk with, but he was a lovely old fella. His name was Bill. So we didn't call him Stuttering Bill, but that's sort of, everybody sort of thought in their head, that's Stuttering Bill. He was 96 years old. So one day, one of the other bowlers about my age, maybe a bit older, he starts having a bit of a go at me. You're the flat earther, aren't you? And I said, well, yeah, I do think that the earth is flat. That's what we're bowling on is a flat Earth. I think it's flat. And so they started asking me questions. And so because we're sitting around there, waiting before 1 o'clock starts, we've got the bowl starting, we've got time to kill, having a beer. And so they started asking me questions. Well, how does it work? How does the sun set night? So I started showing on a model. I pointed in the middle of the table. I said, well, that's your North Pole. And there's your continent spread out around it. And then the sun goes around us. And the sea is all level. So as the sun gets further away, it seems to get lower and lower, and that's why it sets. And when it comes back the next morning, that's why it rises. It's, I explained all they're firing questions at me left, right, and centre. And then not long before we'd sort of finished, we're getting ready to go up and bowl, Bill spoke up and goes, he's right, that's what we were taught. And I said, see, there you go. A 96-year-old man, that's what they were taught back in school, back in the 1910s, 1920s. That's what they were taught. The Earth is flat. The North Pole is in the centre. So it's not like it's a new thing. It's pretty much an old thing, but its time has come now because we have the technology that those people back then, the ancient Greeks, didn't have. We've got. We are in such lucky, abundant times. We've got the digital camera. We've got the Nikon P900, P1000. We've got Zoom digital cameras, and we can send video cameras up to high altitude. The sort of thing that somebody like Auguste Piccard, I doubt he even reached more than about 65,000 feet back in his day. But that was something. That was huge. Today we can send them up to 128,000 feet and show we have that technology. We can show it's flat. We can show the sun doesn't set. We can show the Earth isn't moving. That would be the biggest thing. The biggest thing that I always go back to is the motion of the Earth. Where is it? It's not spinning 1.35 times the speed of sound, and it certainly isn't orbiting the sun at 86.8 times the speed of sound, and the sun certainly is not shooting through the galaxy at 670 times the speed of sound. These are just figures I've memorized out of dividing 514,000 by 767 is 670, and 666,000 divided by 767 is 86.8, and 25,000 divided by 24 is 1,040 miles per hour, which is, divide that by 767, 1.35 Mach. So putting things into Mach speed isn't technically 100% scientifically correct, but it is a way of trying to bring very big numbers of speed into something that we can fathom, because we could always think of a jet plane we've seen a picture of a jet plane breaking the sound barrier, 767 miles per hour. That's fast. That's the speed of sound. So anytime you hear of a Mach number, it's multiples of breaking the sound barrier, speed of sound. So 1.35, 1 1/3 times the speed of sound is pretty damn fast, 1,035 miles per hour, or 1,041, depending how you look at it, in the same ballpark. Chilster Deluxe, hey mate, good to see you, brother. I like to think of it like one of those kids' bathtub toys with the duck in the bubble being the celestial sphere. Okay. That's awesome, Chilster. Okay, Liz, take care, mate. Thanks heaps for dropping in. It's great to see you. I always see you in all the channels that I visit. The Iron Realm Medias, they're awesome. The Globe Busters. I don't really get to too many others, but every now and then when I do, Liz is always there. So you're definitely into it. Aussie Gold says, to me, that's to do with a universal consciousness. Just have to tap into it. There is a Japanese scientist that does sensory deprivation, and that's where all these ideas come. Yeah, absolutely. Like this, the more still a pond is, the more we'll feel the ripple effect of something. So that is a meditative idea, that meditation is actually really good. And so often you'll see that people say where their ideas came from. It came to them in a dream, or it came to them in a vision. It's never, well, sometimes it might be. I used to mop floors. I mopped floors for years. That was my meditation. Um, it's funny when I think back on it now. Like, I don't remember doing it every single day for years and years on end, but I was just mopping floors. The big dance floor at the back of the Great Northern Hotel in Byron. I mopped that, double mopped it, polished it, and then put the buffer across the top of it for years and years. And that was a form of meditation. It is one of the yogas. Anybody that's ever looked into yoga, everything can be for a form of yoga. You don't just have to sit there with your fingers and going or staring at your nose or something like that. Work is a great form of yoga, especially something like cleaning, where it's just repetition. You can let your mind wander. In fact, I've got a good story about that. I might even just talk about it. What the hell? I'm here with a chat for nothing really to talk about. Hey man, I loved working on my own. One of the guys I worked with, he was a bit of a grump. He'd been there before me, so he thought he was the boss, whereas the real boss was actually a fella called Muhammad, but we all called him Jim because in Australia you don't call people Muhammad, apparently. When he first came to Australia, they said, we've got to give you an Aussie name, so he became Jim. And he was the cleaner of the Royal North Shore Hospital down in Sydney for many years. And then he moved up to the Byron Bay hinterland area, bought an orchard farm, but because orchards, it's seasonal work, he needed something to earn a living week to week type of thing. So he went back to cleaning, and he got the cleaning contract to clean the pub, and I ended up working for him. So I'm earning $300 a week, which was okay money back then. If you're on the dole, not working, you got about $300 a week. And I was only doing 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. So for me, I was out earning my money early in the morning, got me up early, finishing my day as most people just starting their day to go to work. So I loved the cleaning. I was right into it. And I was living a very, very spiritual lifestyle. As I said, I moved up there to become a naturopath. And the reason I ended up not going back into naturopathy, I didn't end up getting around to saying that, but the reason I didn't is because my younger sister, she was into a lot of the same things as me, as she got older, she was also into that, and she started a course down in Sydney that same year. And it was at a more of a private naturopathy school. That's where she met her husband and so on. But after several months of doing it, I'd be talking to her every so often, not a lot. But she changed. The things that she was already vegetarian. I was aiming towards vegetarian, towards vegan, towards fruitarian, towards breatharian. Back then had high ideals. She went from being vegetarian back to being a meat eater, because what she was taught in her naturopathy class is that this blood type, that blood type, this blood type, this is the diets that they have to eat, and her blood type said she should be eating meat. And that she found she liked it when she went back with her partner to his parents' place for a Christmas meal or an Easter meal or whatever it was, and ate meat, and she liked it, and so she went back to becoming a meat eater. It was like I was trying to go the opposite way, and I realised that maybe naturopathy isn't for me. So I didn't. But meanwhile, I was still studying on my own. I was still learning my own stuff. I was still learning all about herbal law and medicines and various things. I started experimenting a little bit with some magic mushrooms back in the day. You could go around the cow fields and sometimes find them, and I wasn't heavily into them or anything like that. I just found a few and tried some out, and I did a 2-week course, actually, very, very interesting. If you're ready for it. I was ready for it. I did a lot of fasting and stuff as well back then, and I was living a very sort of pure lifestyle. But I was also eating well, eating healthy. Mostly vegetarian. I tried to rule out all dairy and all red meat, and that's what I ended up doing. So by the time my daughter was born, she had no red meat in her whatsoever. And she was actually super, super duper strong. She was almost a year old before her grandmother, my mother-in-law side, decided to intervene when she came and visited one time and gave her some chicken, and that was fine, but she'd never had it. She was completely vegetarian and so strong, you'd have to wrestle her to the ground sometimes with a knee on her chest to try and change a nappy because she fought so much. And the day after she'd eaten chicken, I just noticed how she'd lost about half of her strength. She was not nearly as strong as she was. She was a little bit more subdued, not nearly as boisterous and stuff. And it was like, whoa, it's almost like she'd been injected with a jab or something. But I'm getting a little bit off track here because I was going to tell, yes, I was on a bit of a spiritual journey. And as it came up to my 26th birthday, so it's, the winter solstice here, my current wife at the time, she became friends with the neighbour across the road, and they had a daughter born 3 days apart from our daughter. So they became good friends. They both had the same name, Kim, and they both were into a little bit of spiritual stuff and, getting readings and all that sort of stuff, because that's what you do when you live around these spiritual areas. And the neighbour, Kim, said she was, given a reading by a psychic, and the psychic got a bit shocked and said, I don't know if I should even tell you this. And she goes, well, you got to tell me. And she says, I'm getting nothing off you. You shouldn't even be here. And that was a little bit freaky, you know what I mean? So it's like, played in my head a bit, but she was a nice person, nice kid. I got along well with her husband. He was a cool dude. But anyway, so the girls decided to go out on a day shopping for me. Meanwhile, I'm sitting at home with my daughter, and we didn't have television, but I let her watch the odd video, and we had this one called Napoleon, which is about this Labrador puppy that goes and joins the wild dogs in Australia. It's a great kids movie, but she'd watch it over and over. It used to drive me nuts, but she loved it and she was happy. So we're sitting on the couch watching that, and all of a sudden, I'd been using this special Indian spice drink called Bang Lassie for about 2 weeks and doing some cleansing and so forth. And all of a sudden, I started getting this tingling feeling inside of me. Just something like an urgent sort of feeling of something's happening. What's happening? I couldn't work it out. And so I got up and I just walked up and down the hallway, down in the spare room, because we only had the one child at the time. She was still pregnant with our son. There's the bookshelf, a bookshelf a lot like this one right here behind me. And there's a book in there, and in fact, I've got it right there. How about that? I've got it right there. It's quite handy. Eventually, how sometimes, when you're going through a bookstore or a library or whatever, and you just sort of trying to get a feel for a book, and all of a sudden, that's the book. That's what I'm going to get. Well, that one jumped out at me, and this was the book. I kid you not. And I hadn't quite read it at that stage. As you can see, it's second-hand bookstore labels. Can't even read it anymore. I used to buy a lot of books at the second-hand bookstores. I just go and get a stack of them and, realise how much money I had in my pocket until I'd finished up my stack of money and go and purchase them. This was one. And I've been sitting in my bookshelf the whole time, and I'm going, what is this feeling? This book literally jumped out at me. I grabbed it and I opened it up. And it didn't work for me this time. When you open it up and something just jumps at you. It ain't jumping at me today. It's because it's not the day. But if you read the book, it's about Thief in the Night is all about how the Christ is going to return. Yeah, I shit you not. And so I sat back down next to my daughter. I sort of put the book back down, and all of a sudden, just had the weirdest out-of-body experience. Just like I was just up and gone. And where I went, I do not know. I just know I was gone for a long, long, long time. But when I came back to my body, it was like no time at all. And it was just, and I'm just like, whoa. And I was just like, oh, I wear glasses now. Oh, there's my daughter. Everything's back out to normal. It was the weirdest thing. But I had completely changed. I was no longer myself anymore. I was like a walk-in in my own body. You know, if you know anything about a walk-in, it's like where you're on a soul level, you've made a agreement with somebody else. And anyway, the thing it said, the headline that I opened up to, Christ returns. Now, hey, I'm not saying anything. I'm not. You know, what I experienced, though, was a form of Christ consciousness, like you would not believe. It transformed me. And the weird thing is part of my process where everything went through my head is I didn't know what had happened at first, but when I came back to my body, all the birds outside, all of them, there was a huge chorus. Everything was singing loudly. It was amazing. And I had every emotion run through my body. I was laughing and crying and everything at the same time. But then I got the premonition that something had happened to my wife. She is out with this other woman with no sole purpose anymore. They've been involved in some sort of car accident. And I got into my head that she just died. And oh, man, absolutely devastated. I even walked and smashed into the cupboard with my fist, and I was like, no. And eventually, I got over that idea. I thought, no, that's not the case at all. But something had changed in me so much that, I'd always been a little bit sort of proud of my hair, and I had a bit of a goatee back then that sort of reached down to probably about there. Hair is part of a man's ego, but I got into my head then to shave it all off. The lot. Never in my life have I even thought about doing that before. Shave my head, shave the lot off. And so when I did, unfortunately for me, I didn't really think it through because my little girl, not even quite 2 years old, a year and a half, I was there babysitting her on my own. And so when I called out to her when she was looking for me, I said, yeah, Jess, I'm in here. And she came looking at me and she looked at me and she freaked out, burst into tears and ran off screaming. I'm going, oh no, what have I done? What have I done? Ah. And so I gave it 30 seconds or something. I was saying, Jess, it's all right. It's me. It's Dad. Come on. And she'd come running in and look around the corner and freak out again. I was like, oh, she didn't get better until her mother got home. And eventually her mother looked at me and goes, oh my God, what have you done? Because I looked a lot different. But that's an experience I went through. I actually had reached enlightenment for the first time in my life. I nearly said, I said to her, I nearly got to the point where I was going to go on a vow of silence. I wasn't even going to speak. I didn't feel like I had anything to say anymore. I had another book, the one that's called the Bhagavad Gita. One day I went out in the backyard, got into a meditative trance, and I just flicked through it, turned page after page. I didn't read it. I absorbed it. Don't ask me how. I'd never been able to meditate in my life. But in this period of enlightenment, every day I just naturally go out in the backyard, find a comfortable spot to sit in the sun, get into the lotus position and meditate for a good half an hour to an hour. Easily. No problem. It was the greatest feeling in my life. In fact, they had this festival down in Byron, and you're probably familiar with those mimes or street performers who do a human statue. they'd make a pose and they'd stay like that for minutes at a time. They'd be coated in a sort of a silver paint or gold paint, whatever. Very good at it, very professional. And because I was in such a enlightened mood, I was actually wearing my white hemp shirt because I was so into colour for this short period of time. And when I saw him across the street, and there's a big crowd because there's the Taste of Byron Festival in the streets, I just looked at him and I focused on him and I smiled and I said, I'm going to make you laugh. And somehow I just said, I call upon the angel of laughter. And in less than 30 seconds, he lost his shit, cracked up laughing and had to walk away. I didn't mean to do it. I wasn't doing it to be mean or to test myself or anything. It just felt good and felt right at the time. So I'd reached a pretty good stage in my life. Now, the trouble was, though, I still needed to pay my bills, so I still had to go back to cleaning pubs. So this one dude who was the boss, the little boss, Graham, he was big, tall and bald and stuff. So people sort of comment, oh, what is this trend of shaving your head? Because I looked a little bit strange being shaved head because I didn't need to. It wasn't my thing, but I'd done it, not because of him. I just did it because it felt like the right thing to do. But anyway, so I'm cleaning my part of the room, and at this particular day of the week, that part of the pub didn't get particularly busy. They had big bands, like the big bands that tour all around the world and Australia and all the rest. They all went to this pub in Byron Bay. It was a big venue. But a Wednesday sort of thing was a day where they didn't have a band and they just had the restaurant doing lunches and stuff. So it didn't get particularly busy. So he got it into him to tell the bar staff not to worry about putting the chairs up on those non-busy nights, because it was part of their job to put the chairs up for the cleaners for us to come in. And didn't bother me that much. I was like, well, that's a bit inconvenient. How am I meant to clean all around these chairs and shit now? Yeah, just use the big long push broom sweeper through it. It didn't bother him, but it was my job. So anyway, I still did my job. I was not fazed. I'm in this huge state of peace and enlightenment. And he comes out and sees some chairs with some rubbish underneath them that I'd missed. Because, hey, chairs are down. I'm not looking that closely. I missed a few bits of rubbish. He starts throwing the chairs around the room. How fucking hard is it to move some chairs and shit? And he got me angry. To put it lightly, I got angry. And as a result of me getting angry, I spent the rest of that morning cleaning the pub, 5 o'clock in the morning. Most people are asleep. And I'm just screaming internally, how fucking dare he? Who does he think he is? Nobody talks to me like that. All this stuff unspoken. And at the end of my shift, I went way back down to Broken Head Headland, where there's a clothes optional place where there's a natural spring flowing out the side of the mountains. I tried to cleanse myself, tried to get back my feeling of enlightenment, but it had gone. I'd lost it. I lost it because I got angry. And I thought that cleansing myself, getting back to nature, swim in the ocean, it would come back. It didn't. I had it for 2 weeks, best 2 weeks of my life, but I lost it. Next morning, get to work, Graham's got a look of shock on his face. He comes to me because he does the front toilets. He goes, come and have a look at this. I go into the women's toilets, all over the walls in big black marker texture, angry letters, are the things I was screaming in my head word for word, written all over the walls, word for word. How dare he? Who does he think he is? Everything that I was thinking. And then somewhere she'd also left a message. We have to do something about this guy, get him to shut up so we can get to sleep. And I was only saying it internally. I never said a thing out loud. That's part of my weird experience in Byron Bay. Word for word. And I'm talking all over every tiled wall. Big, angry black marker text. So, part of my journey, I have experienced enlightenment, so I do know what I'm talking about. I lost it. I get peaks of it every now and then, but I've never come completely close to how I was for those 2 weeks of my life, where I was just bliss. Satananda bliss. Yeah, hard to describe. So I think I'll read a few comments now and change the topic. 1988 was the year. I used it talking about, lost 1,000 years. The thing is, and I've heard this, how you mentioned DMT, is that one of the books that inspired me to become vegetarian, to seek enlightenment and to basically seek immortality, which is the goal. No shit, I shit you not. Is that she said, it's Linda Goodman, by the way, and turns out she might be a shill as well, for all I know. But she's a good shill, like a witch, I guess. She was a good witch. She said that if you do find that stage of enlightenment, it will feel like the most powerful drug. It will be the drug of all drugs. It will make all those illegal, synthetic and chemical and even natural drugs seem lame in comparison. And she is right. If you want to experience the ultimate drug, fast and cleanse and get rid of all the animal impurities in your body, that is what it actually means to be unclean. It comes from original sin. Now, I know a lot of people think I'm talking through my ass when I mention it, but I believe original sin, forbidden fruit, is actually egg. Eating egg. Now think about the story of Adam and Eve. How does it start? Is that Eve sees a serpent consuming forbidden fruit. So it's quite normal for a snake to actually wander through the swamps and gardens and nests and actually find an egg and swallow it and disappear into the reeds. And a mother duck or goose or whatever will not really even notice. She might think, when I left the nest, there was some amount of eggs. Now there's maybe one less, but oh well, I still care for what I've got. She's not that fussed that one disappears. And so Eve, witnessing this, would say to Adam, have a look at the snake eating an egg. If we're so much higher than the snake in God's eyes, then surely we wouldn't feel the wrath of God either if we consume forbidden fruit. And it's forbidden because it's on the wall. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. It's in between living and non-living in a sense, whereas we were told we have the seed-bearing fruits and the green-leafed herbs. For us they shall be meat. But the egg is like a fruit, but it's the forbidden fruit because it contains a living creature inside of it. This is my interpretation of it. And so Adam reasoned, well, I guess you've got a point there, where free will, we can do as we wish, and so let's try it. But because humans couldn't just swallow an egg whole, and see where this is going, right? They cracked it open and drank the gooey insides of it. And because it was such a naughty thing to do, it filled them with a sense of lust. Oh, what have we done? Oh, we shouldn't do this. Oh my gosh. Oh God, you're so sexy. Oh, and they started fornicating then and there. Meanwhile, Mother Goose waddles back to her nest and she looks at the broken eggs on the ground and she sees the fornicating humans and catches them with egg on their face. Where do you think that expression comes from? And the goose goes from, and then grows furious. You've killed my babies. How dare you? You were the caretakers of life. You're here to protect us. And she grew so furious that she chased them out of the garden. And when they reached into the light of day outside, they felt so bad for how angry they'd made the mother goose that they felt naked in their shame and they covered themselves up. And That to me is the story of forbidden fruit. And ever since then, we've been unclean internally because we've been eating animal foods, eggs, flesh, milk, all those things. You know, borderline on milk. I guess if you're really hungry, you could eat another animal's baby food, but surely now we've reached a stage where we've reached a time of such abundance and knowledge and how to grow stuff, and we've got seeds everywhere and water on demand and soil and nutrients and worms and all the rest, that we can actually grow so much food that we don't really even have to think about killing animals to eat them, or the eggs. Now, it's obviously less of a sin to eat the egg than the mother hen, but I'm not here to judge or to tell anybody else what to do either, mind you, because I still eat a heck of a lot of chicken and fish myself, more chicken than anything. So each their own. I'm just saying that the whole purpose, if you want to feel the most highest experience of the best drug ever, is to cleanse all that stuff out of your body. Have nothing impure, nothing of animal taint whatsoever, then you'll be clean. And then your mind will work a lot better because you've got pure blood running through your brain, and you'll be breathing much better. You won't be getting colds and flu and scratching all the time and blowing shit out your nose, which is a side effect of eating all that stuff. And eventually, if you then concentrate your mind on learning to breathe through the various chakras and so forth, you will reach enlightenment, and that experience of enlightenment will be the greatest drug you can imagine. And it's free, and it's not addictive. You can give it up at any time. It's always there in you. You can tap into it and be as blissful as you want at any time. You can make people laugh from a distance just by thinking about it. It is an incredible, incredible feeling. So it's something worth striving for if that's what you want. So if you feel you have to take artificial drugs to give you a glimpse of what it's going to be like, by all means, it's part of the journey. Every step along the journey is another step. There's nothing wrong with taking baby steps. But when you throw yourself right in, oh boy. Whew. So I don't know if I'll keep going for too much longer. Exactly. Mr. Jesus is Luke Skywalker. You're a cool dude, mate. Yeah, man, I'm not into butchering animals or birds. It doesn't seem normal. Tough times back in the day drove man to it, possibly. Certainly not every meal. And that's exactly the case. You had to do what you had to do to survive. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. Now, I'm 100%. If you've got to do something to survive, then do it. But the people just, I don't know, got to get their big fat steak every day, and you can see it not doing their bodies good. Their skin is looking bad. They're breathing, everything about them. They're getting heart conditions. The biggest killer of heart attack is basically caused by excess animal fats. Now, minimal amounts, back in the day when people did eat a lot of steak, that might have been they killed a cow once a year for a big festival. And, if vegans did that today, it wouldn't hurt them whatsoever. It might even give them a lot of extra nutrition that they were missing, enough so they wouldn't have to do it again for another year. I'm not trying to preach or anything like that when it comes to personal choice, personal preference, but gluttony is one of the 7 deadly sins. Why is it a deadly sin? Because it kills you. It's not called it because you're going to go rotten hell because you did it. You've got free will. You can do as you will, but gluttony, too much of anything is bad for you. Too much of a good thing is bad for you. Everything in moderation is sensible living. So, do as you want. This is my first live on my phone for a long, long time, Tuesday. Yeah, man. I've actually got to go and empty out this beer and get another one. I might just keep going for a little bit longer. It's still early. It's only 6:15 p.m. here, and I don't have to get up till 3:30 tomorrow morning so that I can leave. It takes me an hour and a half in the morning to get ready because, at my age now, 52. See, that's another thing. You shouldn't talk about age. You shouldn't mention your age. You should only be as old as the woman you feel, but not if you're a pedo. Don't. Nobody should feel 15 once they're over 20. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'll be back. Hold that thought. Oh, alrighty. Thanks heaps for chilling out and waiting. Can't praise this beer enough. It's the Vintage Ale, and I can have two tonight. So cheers again and again. I really appreciate it. I feel I've reached a landmark in my life. 1,000 subs. Hey. Obviously, not all of them are here today, and I doubt many of them even watch my channel at all, and I'd say a lot of them could even be ones who only subscribe to watch and laugh and steal content, or well, not that I put out much content worth stealing. I try and do all my stuff as original as possible, but eventually I do hope to start doing some more serious content where I'm actually using internet content and images and stuff I produce myself, and hopefully making some more professional type videos if possible. But it's not easy. I work 5 days a week just to pay my bills and buy my beer and cheers. Try to keep my bills to a minimum, but they do accumulate, and there's always something got to be paid for. So finding the time to sit down and learn how to make and edit videos something I've always wanted to do. Hopefully I will do. I've got a book in me. In fact, the introduction of the book that I am writing currently now even says, as I've started to sit down and actually write, as I've realised I've got about 50 books in me that, off the top of my head, that I can write. I always wanted to be a writer amongst everything else that I wanted to be. But a writer is one thing I know I can do, and I'm pretty good at. I'm pretty clever. I've got a good way of words, and I can try and make it entertaining and interesting and hopefully make people laugh, because I actually think comedy is one of the highest forms of intellect, believe it or not. Is that the clown, the person writing comedy, and that's one thing I liked about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, is he's writing some really, really clever stuff and making it funny. And when you can make somebody laugh, that's a good writer. And that's what I hope to do. So I'm writing the introduction to my current book, which is actually meant to be a serious book. But the introduction, I'm going to try and make it as amusing as possible. You don't need 1,000 to do a stream on your laptop or something at home. You need your you need 1,000 to be able to stream on a mobile device, which I'm actually doing this on a mobile device. But I'm reading the comments. Oh, something went wrong. It says something went wrong, tap to retry. Seems to be still working. I'm not going to tap it. Yeah, if you want to live stream on your phone when you're away from home or something, I think you need 1,000. And anyway, most of the time when I'm outside of home, if I'm going to take a video, I'm just going to take the video through the camera and then just upload it when I get home, because I can do it through my internet. Is it all right if I call you Kevin? I'm pretty sure I've seen you called Kevin before. Mr. Jesus is Luke Skywalker. Yeah. I am writing it. I am doing it. I'm finally getting around to doing it. I'm writing it. I've written probably several pages now, and then I was at work the other day where I had no internet connection. Sometimes where I work, I did traffic control. I don't brag about being a traffic controller. That's what I do. It's actually pretty fucking cruisy. If you're looking for some cruisy money, but you've still got a lot of responsibility. Traffic controlling can be pretty good. So I was out somewhere with no internet, and so I also got out my notepad, and I wrote out several pages as well on that. So now I've got to gel that back into the one I've already written on the laptop, and in the process of that, I also started writing out a point form of the chapters that I intend to do. So yes, I've absolutely got every intention of writing my first book, and it's going to be a serious one. It's going to be a scientific one, and it's the one that I think needs to be written. I should have written it years ago, but there's no time like the present, and it's going to be called, sorry, to be a big noter of myself, but, somebody had to discover it, and it's called Thatcher's Law of Perspective. And if you look on my perspective videos, it's like the second one in the list is Thatcher's Law of Perspective. It's this, Illuminati symbols. It's funny how everything actually ends up being Illuminati symbolism, and if you're doing it, I think it's done by design. I think it's deliberately done to make us scared of the truth, because if you're scared of Freemasonic symbolism, then anytime you see somebody try to do it, you can say, oh, he's a Freemason. He's one of them. But I'm not one of them. I'm not. I've never been a Freemason. I was raised as a Catholic. By the time I was about 14, I stopped going to church because I thought it was all a bunch of bullshit. When I came back from the States after a year abroad as an exchange student, I was more interested in learning other religions and started looking into things like the Hindu and Zen Buddhism and stuff. And the more I read about that and the more I got into it, the more I realized how the Christian religion is actually very, very right in some respects, but in a way that they don't even realize. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be. They're just droning out their prayers and stuff, and it means nothing to them. But once you reach a stage of, like I think Zen Buddhist enlightenment, it all starts to come back around, and you think, hey, Jesus was onto something. And hey, I'm a big fan of the Christ. His followers called Christians, on the other hand, I think leave a little bit to be desired. I will call myself a Christian, but I won't associate myself with the other people that call themselves Christians, if you know what I mean. Like, in general, I think they're dogmatic. Their belief is, if you believe in Christ, all your sins are forgiven, all you have to do is believe, and then when you die, you'll go to heaven. It's like, no. The only time you can annul your sins, which is your wrongdoings, pardon me, I've got some gas happening as well, is while you're alive. While you're here and now and living is the only time that you can annul your karma while you've got the chance. That's what you came here for, is to annul your karma here and now, so that then in your next life you might then have a better chance at living forever. And why not? We're having this conversation. True immortality. Take them off for a second. They don't sit right anymore, since they're my backup glasses with wire and silicon. True immortality, enlightenment. If you want to know what that is, go outside at night and look at the stars. Every one of them is an enlightened master who has earned his seat in heaven. And they are trying to send down the vibratory frequencies, if you can tune into them, to help you, little star seed, to become a star, to earn your seat in heaven and become immortal. However, from some perspectives, that might be considered really bloody boring. From our perspective, it would be, because all they can really do is watch. Maybe that's what they call watchers. They can try and send out vibes and try and call in other energies, the sylphs and whatnot, to try and help you and assist you and stop you doing stupid things, and try and send messages all sorts of different ways, but they can't really interfere physically. And in most cases, they're not really even supposed to. You have to accept the consequences of all your actions. So if you're really seeking immortality in this single human lifetime, then you are trying to become a star. Now, don't let that fool you. How have we been fooled by the great deceiver here on earth? Is a star is a Hollywood star, and they imprint their hands into concrete, set Satan set into the ground with the pentagram star, where people can walk all over them for all eternity. That is set down. Enlightenment is the opposite. It means foregoing the riches and the pleasures and the fame and the fortune. You don't really want to be famous. You don't want to be rich. You want to live a good, simple life, helping the people out in your immediate presence. And that is pretty much what the true enlightened people have ever done. You know, they don't go out seeking fame and fortune. It might find them, but you're not seeking it. And any of them that become rich and famous, like I would love to become rich, don't get me wrong. I would love to become rich simply because I know how to invest the richness back into the community, into the world. This is my personal agenda. If you to say I've got an agenda, I've lived really poorly. I've never been rich in my life, but I am rich because of what I got in here. What's in here, money can't buy. Money will never buy. I'm as rich as I will ever be. You know, if I had billions of dollars, I will not be better off. I will be worse off. I don't want money. I don't want wealth. I don't want fame. Because I'm already rich. I've got it. I've got the key to happiness. And that is to strive to make the world a better place, to look after nature, to enhance nature, not to wipe it out and destroy it and make massive monocrops and monoculture and all that sort of crap. Our goal is to live in such a way that the animals and the birds and the fish and everything thrive with us, so that we thrive and we don't have any enemies. When we make an animal our enemy, they're going to fight back. It's their nature. When you find an enemy, what do? You fight back. But if you make a friend, what do? You try and help make their life better, and your life becomes better. Everybody's life becomes better. The whole form of agriculture that we're doing now is making enemies of nature. We can do better. We can do so much better. And that's my message. That's my goal. Our happiness comes from their happiness. Jesus, the Christ, says it is better to give than to receive, because seeing happiness in others gives you true happiness. Making others miserable to make you feel better, that's evil. That is pure evil. And at the end of the day, it's what's going to kill you. And it won't make you happy. Happiness is from helping others to thrive. Kevin is your name, or some Kevin the Koala. Flat Earth Jesus. I know what you mean. I'm more of a Hermetic Gnostic, but I'm always in the Christian debates. I've arranged for don't tell them my true position. I swear they twinkle. Yeah, absolutely. You seriously go out and look at the stars and just spend some time in silent communication and appreciation of them. You'll always find one that is actually wanting to talk with you. Just look at it and send it some love and say, just thank you. Thank you. I'm open to your communication. You won't hear it in words. You won't hear it in anything, but it will give you a spiritual sense of knowing that you can't put into words. You know stuff. And I think that's the key to everybody that's ever found enlightenment, is you can't really put it into words. The only thing you can say is, when you know, you know. when you don't know, you don't know that you don't know. The whole Dunning-Kruger thing. I've been writing a little bit about that lately on some Facebook stuff, saying, people always accuse me, being the flat earth, Dunning-Kruger effect. It's like, cool story, cool story. But who also suffered Dunning-Kruger effect is Dunning and Kruger. It's because the more that they knew and were able to write about it and project that onto other people, is then the more that they've realized how little they know. And if they didn't know it, then they are suffering the very thing that they are describing. They are the Dunning-Krugers. The more you know, the more you know you don't know. It's simply how it works. So the minute you write a paper and become famous for that paper, then the more you technically are the sufferer of the thing you're talking about. I'm a geocentrist too. Tripping out was Venus almost got to Mars in the sky. Now a month or two later, Mercury is near Mars and Venus is closest to the sun. Nothing adds up in the Helio model. That's the whole problem. Nothing does. They've tried. They've given it a good run for their money, but nothing in the Helio model adds up. Absolutely nothing. And the biggest one is, as Ozzy says, you're a geocentrist. Is if you are geocentrists, things start to fall back into place. That whole Antikythera device from way back. It was discovered at the bottom of the ocean in a place called Antikythera. That's what gives it a name. It's a type of astrolabe full of, it's basically like a mechanical computer back in its day. And when they 3D printed it and reconstructed and all the rest, they found it's such an accurate thing they could predict any lunar eclipse at any given time, and even to the point of telling us what shade of red it's going to be. This is the sort of knowledge that humanity has possessed in the past. We have been so severely dumbed down because we've lost so much knowledge. And the more we discover this stuff, the more we realize humans from the past were absolute friggin' geniuses, man. We're the dumb ones. We are so far behind. But we think because we've got electricity and electronics and the digital age that we are somehow so far superior. Well, we are not. We are so far behind. The architecture alone tells us how far behind we are. The formations and the intricacy of huge cathedrals, the organs that have all been dismantled and taken apart. Oh man, that's like, makes me cry to think what we've lost from pipe organs, things that we have lost in technology, but we can rediscover it again. That's all it comes down to, is that we just have to rediscover it. Like little children rediscovering. We are little children compared to our forefathers and the technology and things that they knew. They weren't building steel and concrete buildings which have to be demolished after 30 years anyway. Things that are just built for obsolescence to be rebuilt again. The things they were built can stand for thousands of years, have stood for thousands of years in some cases. Yeah, it blows my mind sometimes how we think we're so superior, but we're actually not. We've got really good communication. That's great, but yeah, I think the vast majority of it is probably used for not the greatest educational purposes. It's probably a bit too much of things. It's a bit like with television. The bloke who invented television thought it was going to be a really good way to educate the world, a lot of people at a time, and what do we end up with? I Love Lucy and that sort of stuff. Television never became what it was invented for, and the internet has never become what it's invented for, because unfortunately we've become very, very dumbed down. And I'm not just saying that to put people down and say that I'm better. I've suffered the same. I grew up watching television. I was a television generation. I watched the Flintstones. I watched Hogan's Heroes. I watched all these sitcoms, Gilligan's Island, you name it. I Dream of Jeannie. I mean, you think of that today, under today's how we decipher things. Genie is like a jinn, and we dream of genies. We've been put under a spell, isn't it? That's what it's all about. It's been putting us under a spell, brainwashing, mind control, programming. And that's where I fully believe that the flat earth understanding is the key. Unlock the door of the brainwashing. That's where you start unindoctrinating yourself. And most people with enough, what's the word for discernment again? The word that means discernment. I'm starting to get a bit tired. It's been a long day. Actually didn't sleep very well last night. And I never ever talk this much at a time either, mind you. This is like a record for me. Anybody that has critical thinking skills, that's the way I'm looking for, just critical thinking skills. Anybody that fully looks into the flat earth and genuinely sets out to prove the globe, that's where every single one of the people who are today a flat earther have come from. We were never born flat earthers mentally. We were never brought up flat earthers. We were never uneducated. We had a good education. I know I had a good education. I fully believe the heliocentric model inside and out. And it's because I know so much about it that today, with today's technology and what we can see, is how I know that it's a load of shit. It's an absolute load of absolute. Oh, don't tell me I lost my internet connection. I'm live again. Uh-oh. Don't tell me I'm getting which it gets it buffering. Yeah, the thing is, I know, because I know what I know, that the heliocentric model is just wrong. The little old lady who swallowed a fly. If she never swallowed a fly, she'd never have to swallow the whole web of lies that the spider spins, which is the spinning around the sun. That was the Copernicus model, is the web of lies. When you're sitting at the base of the universe, looking up at what you see is what you get. You don't need to invent anything. You don't need to then swallow a bird to catch the spider. We don't have to be spinning around the sun at ridiculous speeds. You don't need a cat to say, well, the sun is going through the universe at these huge amounts of speeds. You don't need to swallow a dog to say, well, the universe is this vast galaxy. It goes on and on and on until eventually you swallow the horse and she's dead, of course. And that's where we've reached now, the age of enlightenment, where the heliocentric model has run its course. It had its time under the sun, trying to spin around it, and it's dead. It's as simple as that. I can't entertain anybody who believes in the heliocentric model whatsoever anymore. Yeah, they've reproduced that Antikythera mechanism for sure. Nuba, much love. Hey, mate. Seen you around a bit, Jeebus. Yeah, I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy trying to decipher what's going on. And I think I've been born into a very fortunate time. I started off this video actually talking about some numerical stuff. And before I go, I'll go into it a bit more. The 4, 6, 8 connection that I talk about is, so people might steal my identity. Who cares? I don't care. The 4 comes from a power number of 22. Just as my son had actually the 22 connection. When you're born on the 22nd, you got the 22 vibration, and in Freemasonry, that is a power number. I don't know shit about Freemasonry. I don't know shit about a lot of stuff, but I do know numerologically catch 22. 22 is a power number, and that is why you will find that the Gregorian calendar has always been adjusted so that things like the solstices and the equinoxes will always fall on the 22nd. So you got the 22nd of December, where the sun dies on the horizon from the northern hemisphere's point of view, and in the far north, that's when it descends into the underworld because it goes beneath the horizon, and after 3 days and nights they can see it's visibly rising again, and that is why today they celebrate the birth of Christ, or the birth of the Son of God, 3 days after the winter solstice, the December 25th. Most of the world still celebrates the birth of the Son of God, December 25th. The autumnal equinox or the spring equinox, depending on which side of the equator you're on, is March 22nd. The winter equinox for us is June 22nd. That's the summer equinox for the internal side of the equator. And then September 22nd is the other one, the other autumn and spring one, depending which side of the equator you're on. So the 22nd is a power number, and that's why I think the Gregorian calendar was worked out in such a way with their 31 days here, 30 there, 28, 29 there in February, so that they can more or less keep the solstices and equinoxes on the 22nd. It's a powerful number. And it's also 4 in Chinese numerology. 4 is actually a number of death. It's also a cross. It's the 4 is a bad luck number in a way, but 2 4s is 8, which is infinity, and it can also be drawn on the hourglass, all sorts of different ways. So the 4-8 symbolism, and this is what I learned in numerology from Linda Goodman back in the day. That first book I read about astrology and numerology and lexicology is 4 and 8 are the numbers of fate and destiny, and you can almost hear the word fate when you say 4-8. Fate. It's 4 and 8 are the numbers of fate and destiny, and 6 in between is the number of love, feminine love, divine energy. 6 is the figure of the egg. It's the symbol of the little bee. It's the silent bee in womb. It's feminine energy, and that's why the 6 and 9 together are the yin and yang, because you got your feminine and your masculine, and it's actually yang and yin, but that's neither here nor there. The thing is, the 6 and 9 is also the symbol of Cancer, which is the astrological symbol ruled by the moon. And the moon, if you look at a full moon and slightly slightly out of focus your eyes and look at it, you can actually see a yin and yang in the moon. And if you look at the astrological symbol of Cancer, it is actually a 6-9 on its side. So the 6-9 adding to 15 is a 6. So the 6 is always going to rule over 9. So feminine love will always beat masculine love. The 9 being the spear, the sperm, the pen, the sword, all those penetrative things. Eventually, if you add 6 and 9 together, you always get back to 6. So 6, 6, 6 is actually feminine love, but the reason why it's then the number of man is because you add them together, you got 1, 8, which becomes 9 again. So that's why it's the number of man, 6, 6, 6. It's numerologically. I'm not talking about any other sort of weird shit, but just in numerology, 6 is a number of feminine love. And so in my life, from a young age, I started school at 4 because I was ready. Whereas most people wait till at least they're 5, sometimes even closer to 6. But I started at 4. And so throughout my life, because I was born in 71, that's an 8. So I started at 4, born in the year 8, born on the 22nd. In the 6th month, the 6th, I've got the 4, 6, 8 combination throughout my whole life. So every time it's an uneven number of years, whatever that was, 75, then that's when I was 5 or whatever. I can't really think exactly how it works now, but I just knew that every year was an even number. That's when I was an even number at school, and that's when I turned an even number that year. So 4, 6, 8 always ruled throughout my life. And that's why I've sort of had an extra interest in numbers, because it made so much numerological sense to me. It just came naturally. And lexicology is the alphabetical vibrational frequency of numbers and stuff. And the thing is, with the way most people do numerology these days, or what's the other word for it, gematria, is that they'll never quite get it right, because even though the letters of the alphabet 1 to 26 do have a certain frequency and vibration according to that, it's still not correct. It's actually incorrect, because we've taken our alpha beta from multiple sources, where certain letters, for example, like U, V, and W, they are all vibrating at the frequency of 6. So if you put one as 23, 24, whatever, it's not correct. I've never looked into gematria, or I think that's how you pronounce it, for that very reason, because the one I learned from Linda Goodman back in the day showed the correct one, and they're mostly pretty correct. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 works from A to F. And then it all goes a bit egg-shaped, so to speak. So, yeah, I just thought I'd bring that up, because throughout my life I've had this 4, 6, 8 vibration that's always just felt right to me. When I was 8, I moved from Bathurst to my town of birth. It was traumatic. But it wasn't that big a deal. We moved to a block of land that my grandfather had given to my mother when she turned 18. He was an awesome man, a science teacher, a high school science teacher, kept his cows, kept his big veggie patch. So he was basically a farmer and a school teacher, a high school science teacher. And he reared 9 children, didn't get married till he was 35. Did all right for himself. Left a good, what's that word for it? Legacy to all of his children. And his oldest one was my mother. She was the one that became the pharmacist. So we moved onto that block of land when I was 8 years old, and that was when, unfortunately, my dearest uncle died. Very tough for me as well. But then when we moved to the coast, I was 13. And again, there's that 4 connection, 13. So I really killed my connection to the country, moved to the coast, started learning to be a coastal kid. So I've got 4, 6, 8 connection all throughout my life. And you often find that people who do have that vibrational frequency generally tend to meet more people with the same one. And then the people that have the 7 vibration, one of my best mates had that. Because his name and birth date both became a 16, 1 and 6 being 7, he always had that vibrational frequency and had a lot of success in his life playing sports and that with the number 7. So, I just wanted to mention numerology just a little bit, simply because today is the 8th of the 8th, and to me that is powerful. And there you go, 8 and 8 is 16. So there's the 1 and 6 is 7 again. And 2023, I guess you could add all that together, and that's another 7, 2, 2, 3, 7, 7, 14, and 5. 5 fingers on my hand. Oh, it's meant to be. It's fate. But anyway, I just think 8, 8. Today, being the day I reached 1,000 subscribers, is just, it's meant to be. Wheels are in motion. Things are happening. That's it. You can see anything you want in numbers, really. There's only 9 numbers, in case you didn't know. There's 9 numbers, numerals, 1 to 9, and 0 is the void. So there is 10, and you can really go down deep rabbit holes with that too. I might do that one day, but the 1 and 0 is also 0 and 1. It's still 1, but when it's the 10, it actually becomes what they call lion energy, which is also sun energy. 10 is the vibration of the sun. It's the 1 and the void. The lion roars. So 10 is a very powerful number because it is 1. 1 and 0. When you've got 1 and 1, that is both 11 and 2. In Roman numerals, it's 2. And the symbol of 2 is actually, when you look at it, it's actually the person kneeling in front of the 1. So it's saying, when you recognize your own divinity, you kneel before it and become the 2. Yeah. And the 3 is just completing the loop. Yeah. If you can understand the whole 1, 2, 3, you understand everything about numerology. The further you go away from it, the less you really know. The 1, 2, 3, the Trinity, is probably the highest knowledge until you get back all the way to the 1. And when you're 1, there's nowhere else to go. That's when you become a star in the heavens and pump out your own frequency. Might be going a little bit off track there, because some things you can never really fully understand until you've been through the full course of knowledge. And that's one thing I try to keep saying too. When we learn something, we earn a degree. But there's 360 degrees in a circle. So if you're only learning by a degree at a time, it could take you 360 of them to come full circle. But that's the journey. Once you've come full circle, then you're back at 1 again. You're 1 with it all. You've got all knowledge. So if you can learn by a whole, you're taking a bit of a shortcut. You're lucky. Cheers, Griffin. Hey, nice to see you, mate. Thanks for coming by. We're all, and this is my philosophy. When people ask me, do I believe in a God? The answer I always come back to is just saying, I believe that everything is of God. So the minute you say you believe in a God that is somehow separate from anything, that's not a God I believe in at all. I just can't see how that could be God. The only way God could be God is if everything is of God. And so the people who are stubbornly refusing to believe God are basically just refusing to believe in themselves. God is within everything. Every religious scripture or whatever, every thing that I've ever read always says that God is within every living thing, but seek it chiefly within yourself. That is why be still and know that I am God. I am that which I am. It's always been the message of anybody who's understood, and they're not talking of the I, that is the ego. And that's why Jesus would say the Father and I am one. He's not saying, I am the Father. He's just saying, I am one with the Father because I have allowed him to flow through me. That is how the Father and I are one. Knowledge can work. And I can see now at 7 p.m. that we have a read here of Aussie Gold. You're an interesting character, mate, because you came across when we first met as a dyed-in-the-wool helioist, from what I could tell, and now. So Golden Triangle 36, 36, 72, 108, 216, 432, all the way up to 9. Yeah, virtually all the 3, 6, 9 things do. And the in-between also do. Moon is 2,160 miles wide. 60 by 60 by 24 is 86,400. Divided by 4 quarters of the day is 2,160. Yeah, everything is done mathematically. In fact, who was I listening to on the way home today? I think it was Archaics 7. Well worth listening to if you can find him. And what they've said, I'm trying to think what because I only heard it briefly for the first time, but so Jesus being 33, killed when he's 33 on the, it was something to do with the April anyway, it had a 339 connection anyway. And whatever it was, it turns out that the whole 93 million miles away of the sun is connected to this crucifixion. And as I've already said, the birth actually, what they think is the genuine birth is actually the 11th of September, which is why he would be a Virgo. Or was that a Leo? Virgo. And that's why 9/11 is such an important date, because that's his actual birth date. So they want us to live in fear of his birth date. Then they mock us with this crucifixion date with 93 million miles away. It was very interesting to listen to. I'll have to listen to it again. But Archaics 7, really good channel. Give you a chance to listen to it. Great to listen to while you're driving. Yeah, Jason. Yes, awesome. Yeah, that's right. Well, that's how it works. Is you don't have to believe in something to know it. When you know something, it means you've pondered it, you've gained the knowledge, and you can store it there and analyze it against the backdrop of all your other knowledge, all these other things that you've learned throughout your life. And I think I've had a bit of a gift, but I've also, especially in later years, loving a drop. I tend to let the knowledge fall where it lay until eventually I reach a point where you put the pieces together and you just sort of know intuitively what is correct and what isn't. Like when somebody tells you that we're spinning at a certain speed, for example, then you can say, well, yeah, I used to believe that when I was younger, but after years and years of analysis and looking at it, I think that idea is a load of shit. The Earth isn't moving. Why have we got thousands of different points of view from official sources like pilots and NASA and all the rest that say we treat the Earth as flat and stationary for the purposes of flight? That alone should be enough to convince the ordinary person. But when you absorb all of this knowledge over years and years and years and years, it doesn't take much to put the pieces together to say, well, I know shit from clay. We're obviously not moving. We're obviously not hurtling through space. We can't have a pressurized atmosphere around an uncontained ball that's doing that. There's no curvature. The pieces that fit together say it's a stationary planar Earth where everything finds its place according to density and buoyancy. Now, if there are invisible pulling forces pulling everything down, I can't really see them because they stop at a certain point. They're not strong enough. You can easily break that pulling force. You can put a finger over a straw in a glass of water and lift that out and see that tiny little vacuum easily overcomes gravity just there alone. And of course, there's formulas to explain that, the mass times the square of the distance and all that sort of stuff. There's plenty of excuses for why gravity doesn't work when it doesn't, but there's no real reasons to say why it does work when it does, other than saying, well, it's just less dense than the medium, and so it will fall through it until it finds a place of resistance from a more dense medium. Pretty straightforward. What guy got 30 years in prison for what? Crimes against women. American guy. I think the Pluto flyby woke me up. I was like, hang on, they only just found out what it really looked like then. What was everything they proclaimed about it before? Yeah. They're just constantly making stuff up. And honestly, they make it up and then they find something to fit the narrative. Like anybody that believes we've been to space, I seriously doubt that we've sent anything to space. Probes, satellites, any of that stuff. I don't think it's happened. I believe that there's a solid firmament. I'm not going to use the word dome, even though dome would be good, but if we had a dome, it would actually have to be thousands of miles high to cover the entire Earth. And I think that there's a firmament and it's only about 60 to 70 miles high, and that's where everything stops. Nothing can get past that. So space exists between that 60 mile and the 20 mile or 12 mile high position. It's a big area because you can't go up there. Once you go above 12 miles, nothing can thrust through it. So you may as well be in orbit. But you got nothing to float on either, nothing to maintain buoyancy. So as soon as your thrust runs out, you just drop, and come back down. That's everything we've ever witnessed, all the rockets, these parabolic arc. Nothing can go that high. So to think we've been to space, but then that then begs the question, or asks the question, how far is Pluto, Venus, Mars, Jupiter? I'm not even going to ask about Uranus. Not interested. But you know what I mean? How far exactly are they? Like if Venus transits the sun, well, that sort of suggests then that Venus must be within our atmosphere as well. And maybe that's why it shines so bright, because it is so close. Sometimes I even question, and I don't think it is because it doesn't seem to match, but it could potentially be the moon itself, and that's what projects the moon down lower into our atmosphere, because we know Venus can have phases, but I don't think it is Venus that does that. But for example, when you start on that line of thinking, if you start that way, then it could be within this side of the firmament as well, and that's why it can transit the sun, and it's tiny. The moon might be something similar. The Mars might be something similar, but they're not tangible physical balls we can go and land on because we just can't get up that high. Mercury. There's another question. Well, it's even closer still to, in the heliocentric model, the closer it is to the sun, I guess it's further from us, which would make still Venus the closest. A lot of things I haven't really thought all the way through, but well worth thinking of. Anyway, guys, superfluid helium. Oh, here we go. Space cadets. TOS. They call me TOS. I think it's superfluid helium, invisible water up there. Yes. Oh, right. There you go. You correct yourself. Thanks, Justa. Check it out. Superfluid helium. Yep. I've got no problem with that whatsoever. Because as you know, when a gas gets compressed, it turns into a liquid. And the colder a liquid is, the more dense it is. So this is my theory on the firmament itself and the pressure gradient of our atmosphere. I may as well talk about that since I've still got some beer left. See, I think a pressure gradient in or beneath a firmament works both ways. Is that the more dense thing has a pressure gradient downwards, but the less dense, such as helium and hydrogen, as they get held up against this layer, which I believe is probably supercooled hydrogen, because I think that's the lightest element we got. That might be a different gas altogether. But just as water freezes on a lake, and the frozen stuff then gets suspended above the water, because even though ice itself would float in water, when it creates a layer across the lake, it floats on top, and it's sort of cushioned by the pressure beneath it. And so that upward pressure of hydrogen and helium is creating like a reverse pressure gradient in its own right, because of it is so light, and it gets pressurized up against it. So if you reversed it, if you spend a bit of time standing on your head and look at everything in reverse, it makes a bit more sense, but it still works the same way. So that it creates a high pressure of lowness, and then because it is super cold up there, it's compressed, it's cold, it turns into liquid, and so yes, it would create a what did you call it again? A superfluid helium. That would be exactly what it would create. Superfluid helium. And if the moon is bouncing up against that and rotating due to the electromagnetic forces that keep everything rotating around Polaris, that would explain why the moon stays up there, because it's diametrically opposed, diamagnetically opposed to the Earth below, and it is stopped from getting so far, but then it has virtually zero friction from that superfluid helium, just enough so that it lags by about 50 minutes per day from what the sun does, and the stars go just that 4 minutes faster than the sun, because I believe they're actually above the firmament, and we see them through the icy layer, which gives us the sun and the stars, but the moon is beneath. And because it's so close to it, where it gets the sunlight from it, hitting the moon, projected down to our lower atmosphere, where the light exists in the atmosphere, which is only 12 to 14 miles high. That's where we see the moon projected from the little helium one. That's my personal understanding of the moon. But superfluid helium, that's a beautiful term that I never really considered before, but I like it. Yeah, awesome stuff. I think the more we think about these things and more we discuss it, the more we're just breaking down the clues. Take it all in as a clue, not as in a gospel truth, Or, oh, this guy says that and that guy. No, just don't think of it that. Just think, oh, I absorb the knowledge that fellow says, that fellow says, that fellow says. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to, Eric Dollard, for example, says that the sun doesn't give off anything. It's a transformer. If you think of it from the perspective is if it's given off something way, way above the firmament, hitting down into that helium hydrogen layer. So that energy hitting the hydrogen, fusing into helium, creates that ball of plasma. Well, science tells us that's what the sun is. It's helium fusing into hydrogen, but maybe it's not thermonuclear. It's not giving off anything. It's creating a plasma ball, much like when an arc welder is arc welding and he's got this huge energy source, and when it hits the earth, it doesn't quite touch, but it creates that plasma ball that you need the welder's mask so that it doesn't blind you. Could be a similar sort of effect of some other energy source coming down from above, creating the blinding ball of plasma, which is our sun. I think that there's something in that. So why is it called an arc welder? Arc of dome. There's a lot to be said for where we get certain words for. Noah's Ark, archons, architecture, the arch of architecture. There's certainly something to be said from, and a lot of that ancient architecture was about transforming the light into this realm, and it creates a healing effect. It's got the it's something that you could really talk about all night long for, but I do have to be up early again in the morning. Reaction light. Reaction is only a fraction away from refraction. Yeah, the common go-to term for why we see too far, refraction, reaction. All light, I believe, is a reaction. It's not traveling as such. It's reacting to the energy input to it from something enlightening. So if it's it's light, isn't it? Yeah, light is the key to it all. I need a breather. I don't normally talk for this long. Here's a little refractive cube to have a look at for a second. There's a Kiwi doing a brown eye at the Aussies. And you put it like that. There's a Kiwi. It's just a little glass trinket, little pyramid, but I think there's so many keys to knowledge that can be seen. Like, even when I hold it like that, a tiny little glass trinket picked up at an airport as a gift to this Australian from some Kiwis. Sometimes I think there can be so many answers in a little thing like that because of the refraction, the facets. Yeah, the Lucy in the sky with diamonds. Yep. The prisms. Seemingly the job title that Masons get is architect. Absolutely. It's funny, one of my cousins became an architect, and she's one of the loveliest people you could ever meet. And another one of them became a doctor, and she's also pretty bloody awesome. It's like they take the gifted ones amongst us and channel them down a certain tube. And that's why I'm so glad that I myself personally, even though I had the opportunity to do, could have been a doctor, I could have been an engineer, I could have been an architect, could have done so many things, but because I grew up in the atmosphere where I did, in the pharmacy sort of family, I wanted to do naturopathy and saw even that was not going to head me in the right direction. So to this very day, 52 cards in the deck, 52 years old, I'm still trying to decide what I'm going to do when I grow up. You know what I mean? I choose nothing. I'm not going to be put into a pigeonhole. I'm not going to earn a degree. I'm going to be authentic, be my true self, and use my knowledge for something bigger and better than the shit deal they're offering us that gives you a mortgage, death debt, and drives you into the grave. Because everyone I know who is so smart and has taken that path, I can't necessarily say they're happy, successful, doing okay for themselves. Maybe. And good for them, each to their own. I had a mortgage. I had a death debt. It's not the way we're supposed to live our lives. The whole thing is a trick to be bamboozled. Well, you want to buy a house. You're going to have to borrow all this money. How much money can you earn from the career you've got? Well, based on that, we can give you a 30-year loan. And if you pay it off faster, which means you're sacrificing to them, the grifters, the real grifters in the world, the ones that so many people won't open up their eyes. Oh, a flat earther, he's trying to make a living off flat earth. What a grifter. He's nothing compared to the grift that you've probably signed your life away to. The real grifters are grifting society in every nation out from underneath our feet, putting our descendants into debt in perpetuity, and every year our governments that we're convinced that we voted for, so therefore you get what you voted for. Well, if you don't like it, you should have voted for somebody else. Well, I did vote for somebody else. It made no difference. Everybody I know voted for somebody else. We didn't vote for any of it. But because we're told we voted for it, well, we've chosen our destiny. And that was that movie that came out, wasn't it? What's his name? Just Vote No. Some dude, he won millions of dollars on the lottery. Can't think of his name. It was one of those American comedians. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. Just Vote No. The way you vote no is actually with your wallet. We didn't vote for this. We didn't vote for grifters to come in and steal the wealth of every nation. Every nation. Stealing the wealth. Oh, another crisis in a third world country. Oh, let's donate some little pittance we have left over after all the taxes we pay. It was make us feel good about our little lives. It's all a scam. It's all a scam. Every last bit of it. Anytime you're donating to try and find a cure to cancer, Richard Nixon funded a study back in the day when he was the president because he hated the hippies so much. He wanted to find out how bad marijuana was for the people. And he did this huge, massive study, and they came back and they said, we found out it's really good for people and it cures cancer. And he got furious and made it a class 1 narcotic, and all the papers got destroyed. We've known the cure for cancer all along. So if you've ever donated a single cent to any sort of cancer fund, you've been ripped off. You've been fooled. You've been played on your emotions because you've known somebody who could have been cured by cancer and you wanted to help and you couldn't because they suppressed the cure for the last 50 fucking years. They know the cure. We know the cure. It is so simple. Cannabis is the cure for just about every single last bloody thing on this world. Poverty, homelessness, nutrition, disease, everything can be cured by cannabis in less than 12 months. But you know why we can't do it? Because there's all those grifters out there running the world, stealing the wealth from we the people. Because we can't unite on a single thing because we kept given this and this and this and that and that and this and this to fight over and argue over and bicker over. Whereas if we all united under one single thing, which is all the truth is all about, that's all the true earth movement is all about, is bringing all the people together. Everybody has been suppressed, even those people employed to suppress us, they're not that stupid. They know they're being played as well. We're all being played. And when they wake up and we wake up all at the same time, nobody's going to get played anymore. And unfortunately for the rich, that means your plans crumble like a house of cards. And you can go to work just like everybody else. I'm going to finish my first live chat. Thanks everybody that come along and had a listen. Participated, and I do intend to do a lot with my knowledge, with all the pieces of the puzzle I've been putting together, and I thank you for encouraging me, helping me out of the rut I've been in for so long, because I know that there is something on the horizon, and we can make this world the paradise it was intended to be. You know, don't wait for a savior. The savior is within. Find the power within you. You can find it. And when enough of us find the power that is God-given within each and every one of us, because that is where God resides, within. When you look for God without, you won't find it. The tower that can be spoken is not the tower. The God you look for without is not the God. The God is within. We are the holders of the power of the God energy, and we can take it back. Nobody else is going to do it for us. We have to be our own saviors. Peace and love, and thank you so much, and we'll see you around next time. Now, how do I stop this? Not that way.